Tim Hauraney is a detailed man. I, not so much. I don't know if you noticed Tim's background is a papaya orange. If you're watching on video right now. And Tim's been trying to, all season, make sure that the winning car matches the background behind him, which I think is pretty good. But there's been, it's weird because it shows up one way on your wall and then a completely different way sometimes on your screen, right?
Yes, it does. So, like right now, it's like really orange, but like on my screen, it's kind of like a light orange. And so anyways, Adam and I were discussing before we came on here, like, how do you do Mercedes? Like,
yeah. You can't do green. You can't. Silver's impossible. Black would be counterproductive. Like, it's tough.
Very much would be counterproductive.
And after Lewis leaves, like, purple's not even going to work. Right?
No, because I usually use, when Lewis does well, I usually use purple. And then Ferrari's red. So it's so easy. But like Aston Martin, like we're going to talk about them or whatever. I put them up in green behind me, and it just doesn't, like the green that's behind me doesn't look good on camera. It looks good in the media room, but it doesn't look good like on camera. So it's weird. It's weird. I know. Well, like an Azerbaijan Grand Prix, weird.
I know. Well, you know what? We'll if anybody in the comments has any suggestions for Tim on colors and or how to make it more vibrant in his camera, because I'm sure there's plenty of people that have some experience with this that are watching this. Let us know. Love to know. So listen, papaya rules. Who cares? Don't need them. Doesn't even matter, Tim. Doesn't even matter. Oscar Piastri is the big winner at yesterday's Grand Prix, and I think obviously it was a masterclass performance from Oscar, but it starts in qualifying. And I think what's really important here is that we discuss the obvious, which is where was Lando Norris. And there was a lot of speculation about Lando and about where he was going to be going into this race, and would they be competing? And all they were asked about was, Oscar, you're going to move out of the way? You're going to move out of the way? And then a really unfortunate yellow flag, which, obviously the internet, Tim, went nuts with this because, I think there's a lot of Lando haters out there. There's a lot of Lando lovers out there. Mm-hmm. And so they were clashing on the internet saying, oh, he made a mistake or whatever. What actually happened with the very brief yellow flag in Q3 that caused Lando to lift?
Okay, yeah. So there definitely was a yellow flag there, and that is the reason for his lift. Like he did have to slow down for it. 'Cause, like Andrea Stella spoke to the FIA. He said his conversations with the FIA were constructive, is the way he put it. Whatever that means, I don't know. But it sounds like in turn, where are my notes? Sorry, everybody. Like I made a bunch of notes on what he had said over that. But essentially, the flag marshal in that area, so in that sector, had thrown out the yellow briefly, but then there was another marshal in the other part of the track. So I want to say I'm going to get the turns all messed up. 16, 17. Anyways, second last corner or last corner, however you want to look at it, basically threw the flag, and then the other one threw the white flag or the white signal light. And that was basically what ended up costing Lando being put through to Q2. I mean, a pretty unfortunate turn of events with that one, Adam, because
it's just bad luck.
Yeah, but I mean, if you kind of look at how quick Oscar was, and then what happens if Lando qualifies better? Does he win? Does he come in P2? Is Leclerc, P2? Is George Russell in the like it changes quite a bit. The championship between Norris and Verstappen's probably different as well. Mm-hmm. But regardless, it happened. There was a mistake. Lando got punished by it, and he started where he started.
So this is this is where we woke up on Sunday morning. If you're a McLaren fan, or if you're just a fan, you're an anti-Red Bull person, you're looking at this and you're going, what I needed this weekend was a McLaren victory, and I need Lando to finish ahead of Max. Max starts in the top 10, Lando's 15th. That's not great. No, already not a great thing. This track does allow for passing, but in very specific areas. You're not going to see the risks taken that, like you saw at Monza, where Piastri got past Lando. You're just not going to see that in the same way. There's a couple of corners. There's DRS straight zones. It's a fun track to watch, and obviously the results were a great race. But you have to be very, very particular about this. So you have to wonder with Lando. At the beginning of the race, how quickly can he make his way up the field? And there have been moments this year where you go, he should have passed faster than that. It should have happened quicker than that. And when I looked at the first 10 laps of this race, it was pretty spectacular. You gotta love what he did. He gets up in the top 10 very, very quickly. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, so he's in this. He's in this race. This is for real. And then Tim, obviously the whole point of this race for Lando is get ahead of Max. We know Max isn't liking the car. He's radioing GP going, hey, this car's got no bite. I can't corner the way I want to. I can't do the things I want to do. And towards the end of the race, and we're going to ignore what happened between Red Bull and Ferrari for now. We're going to ignore Charles Leclerc for now. We're just going to talk title. Lando does get ahead of Max, and he's able to stay there. And I'm curious from a driver perspective, because it seemed like Lando was a bit rattled going into the break, had some tough breaks, had some weird decisions, that sort of thing. What do you think Lando's confidence level is after a race like that? He's able to get ahead of Max, able to get 3 points up on him. What do you think?
It's got to be high, I think, Adam, because of the nature, for where he started, what he had to go through for the entire weekend, putting up with us, the media, but then also at the same time, going out driving the car and performing. I thought his race was very strong. He drove really well on Sunday. And I think, a few of the things that, maybe some people didn't really get to pick up on is, because if you're watching his onboard or if you were just watching the race as a whole, they didn't really focus on him too much at the beginning and what he had to sort of do. But he executed that first half of the race before his stop, really well. I think he executed that to the level that McLaren wanted him to. And I think a few things went his way as well. When you start the race with these types of tires, I mean, he was on the hard tire starting, and there was a lot of drivers in front of him who were on the mediums. And the track temperature was pretty high at that time. It was about 46.7 degrees when they started the race. So track temp's quite high. And so the DEG is going to be pretty high as well. So you have to be careful with how you bring the tire into temperature, into its working window, because when you start racing, it's easy with these tires to spike the heat in them, and then they basically just start falling apart and degrading on you pretty quickly. So once you've driven a ton of heat through the tires, the tire doesn't really lose heat easily. So that means it has thermal deg, and then you start graining, and you have so many different types of issues. So for Lando, you have to have that bit of reservation when you're driving. You can't be really aggressive off the start. I thought he did a really, really great job of just navigating everything. He was worried that, it was going to be a challenge for him just to crack the top 10 and even score a point, because of the amount of wing that everybody had kind of taken out in the cars that were in front of him. So their straight line speed was going to be greater than what Lando's was. That's what he was concerned about heading into the race. But once we got into the race, we didn't really see that too much. He didn't really have a huge issue with straight line speed. And by lap 12, he was up to P8, chasing, I think it was Colapinto and Alonso at that point. Or wait, no, Alonso had pitted. He was chasing Colapinto. And then Albon was just ahead of him as well. Yeah. And so I think for that part, he started to get a bit of front graining on his tires, and he was kind of starting to complain about it a little bit. And the team was a little concerned about when they should start thinking about bringing him in, because he had made his way up as far as he could. Him and Alex were up to, I want to say it was P4, P5 at one point. And it was at that moment that the team was considering bringing him in, because he couldn't get past Albon because of the straight line speed that Alex had with his car.
And we will talk about that impressive Williams run later today.
For sure.
We will get to that.
For sure. And that little moment there, Adam, where they were like, okay, we should pit because you can't get past Alex, and that's going to kind of ruin our race, because he would have dropped back probably to P10 when he cycled back out. But Alex pitted the very next lap. Like, they were going to call Lando in, and then they told him not to come in, and then the next lap Albon pitted.
Yeah,
and that's what Lando needed at that moment. He needed that clean air, so Alex got out of the way. And then Lando started rattling off personal best on a tire that was, oh boy, I don't want to say like 30 laps old, maybe. Yeah, it was at least 30 laps old. And he had pushed through the graining of the tire, which was interesting because once those tires started to grain, they really lost a lot of performance. But he was able to kind of get through that difficult phase, and the tire kind of came back to life. And that's when he was able to kind of make that big jump, that jump that got him away from Alonso, getting past him if he were to cycle back out. Because if he had to cycle back out and he didn't get ahead of Alonso, he would have been like P9 when he returned to the track. So that would have been a huge issue for him. He would have had to gotten past quite a few cars to kind of get up to Max.
Tear the tires apart to do that. Yeah,
exactly. Would have, and you're on the mediums, and they weren't lasting very long either. They were graining up really quickly. So, I mean, the team boxed him, I think, on lap 38. And he had done enough to bridge that gap, to clear the gap to Alonso. And that was important. That was huge. And then he set off after Max. And I think it was like a 14 or 15 second deficit to Max that he had to claw back and then get past him. And so he did well to bring that medium up
too.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? It's all about how are you nursing even the medium tire. Like, how are you nursing that up to speed? Like, he was even warned on the radio. Like, Will Joseph, like, warned him, like, when you go out, no wheel spin. I'm trying to remember what the quote was. It was like, just pretend Andrea is on your shoulder and he's telling you no wheel spin out of the corners.
I love that.
That's great,
good call.
Right?
Yeah.
They're
very poetic at the McLaren garage. Sometimes too much.
But yeah, big time. But that's what, he had to do. He had to really like nurse things and get it to where he needed it to be to get the car to perform. So yeah, I mean, it was a really great performance by him. I felt he executed everything he needed to, and he came away with 3 points over Max. I mean, not enough, but it gives him confidence heading into Singapore for sure.
Well, with 10 laps to go, my wife and my father-in-law, who also watch Formula One religiously, what they're saying, like, how can Lando possibly catch Max at this point? Like, and it was amazing to see those times get closer and closer and closer. And the key was, again, Tim, just like at the beginning of the race, okay, fine, you can catch them, but are you going to pass? Are you going to pass Max? And Lando was able to do that pretty cleanly. And I think Max is no easy guy to get around generally. He's just he's a tough defender, and for Lando to do that, huge boost of confidence. Now moving to the other McLaren driver, who had, along with Charles Leclerc, and I have to give Charles Leclerc, if you're saying Oscar had a masterful drive, I would say Leclerc, if Oscar's at 10 out of 10, Leclerc is at 9.8. The only thing Leclerc couldn't do was get past Oscar. And I think both of those drivers were spectacular. But the part of Oscar's race that stands out the most to me is, in the later laps, in the later stages, when Leclerc was really quite literally burning rubber. And we saw what happened to him, because of that. He almost lost his position. And then, of course, there's the Sainz Perez stuff we can get to. Where Oscar would position his car at the end of the DRS zone going into corner one. Time after time after time, that's a gigantic wide space that gets really narrow very quickly. And he was able to make it so that Charles can't take the inside line or the outside line. Tim, how did he do that?
Okay, there's a lot that goes into this one, but it's really fascinating to think or to understand, I guess, how far ahead Piastri kind of has to think, right? Because there are moments where he knows where Leclerc can't pass because it's just difficult. You just can't pass. So you're able to kind of take a bit of a break, like mentally, just a tiny bit of a break there. But once you get out of those corners, like, you have to be back on it, and you have to be thinking, okay, there's a section here. He can probably try something here. I've got to make sure I'm doing this, and this. So There are a couple things. First, his pass on Leclerc was incredible. Just an incredible pass. Like, yes. I know everybody looks at it on TV and they might say, yeah, he got by him. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, how far back he sent that thing. Like, sent it. And not knowing what the outcome was going to be on the exit of the corner, like on the exit of turn 1.
He himself called it a 50-50 move.
It definitely was a 50-50 move. Like he that thing almost went into the trash bin in the span of like a couple seconds. And dude, skimming the wall on the exit, just a millimeter, like just skim it, dude. Like you just don't understand like the guts that kid has when he threw that thing in there. Like that was an incredible pass, man. That's his second incredible pass in 2 friggin' races. I loved it. I was all over that. Like I was like, I had to stand up in my living room, just like, oh my god, like, how is that car not in like 600 pieces right now on the ground? Masterful driving, handled pressure extremely well. Adam, that's a future world champion. I don't care what anybody says. Like
Joel Embiid even tweeted that, and I agree with him. Like that's ice in your veins.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure, man. Like he, nice guy off the track. I've interviewed him a bunch of times, got to know him. Extremely nice guy. Away from the car, he's ice cold killer in it, man. He's he's gonna get you. It was great. I loved it. How did he defend against Leclerc from there on out? Because those two were extremely close in terms of like pace. Like there wasn't much separating Piastri and Leclerc throughout the entire race. I think clean air may have helped a little bit, and it probably helped Oscar just a tiny bit. But what Leclerc, I thought, should have tried to do is try to force a mistake from Oscar, and he did at one point. Try and force a mistake from Oscar coming out of the last corner. Because what that does is that if he makes a tiny error, and there's like memes of it going around online right now where they're coming out of the last turn and like Piastri gets a huge snap, and then Leclerc is right behind, like drifting behind him, and it's a great shot by the two of them. But that's the moment where if Leclerc basically was following him. Like he was basically following him, and that's why they both did the same thing at the same time. He wasn't really thinking ahead of Charles, he wasn't really thinking ahead of Oscar and trying to set him up. He was like literally following him, and that's why both of them made the same mistake at the same time. But if Leclerc hadn't have made that mistake, and they're heading down towards turn 1, there's such a run there that Leclerc can just get on that inside sooner, and that is what he had to do. He had to get a mistake out of him the last corner so he could get the inside line heading into turn 1, because Oscar was doing such a great job of defending that. And that's probably what could have allowed him to win the race, because as Piastri's defending into turn 1, Leclerc can't follow him there. He has to take what's the racing line. But the problem is when he's coming out of turn 1, Leclerc is getting a worse drive coming out of turn 1. Like he's getting back to power, but he's getting a ton of wheel spin because he's in the wake and there's dirty air and all that kind of stuff. So that move, if it were to happen at him, had to happen like way back at the exit of, I think it's like turn 17 or 16, something like that.
Right. And Tim, I think it was shaping up to be a great day for Ferrari. Yeah. And it was shaping up to be a really good day for a guy that really needed it in Sergio Perez. But Carlos, because when Charles Leclerc's tires did start to go out, and you started to see it in the last 5 laps where it became clear he was not going to catch Oscar. But what he could do is fall back a little bit and push Sergio Perez basically back into Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz gets by Sergio, and you get a Ferrari 2-3 finish, which is still a great day. I'm sure Leclerc would have been like, yeah, I wish I could have won, but 2-3 is really good for us and our championship points. McLaren probably would have been happy with that because obviously it allows them to have points taken away from Red Bull that high up, given what happened to Lando in qualifying. By the way, I said Q3 for some reason in qualifying. I meant Q1. I want to correct that. But long story short, Tim, on that one, there was a pass. They did execute the push Sergio into Carlos thing. Carlos gets past Sergio, and then all of a sudden, Carlos and Sergio are together in the wall. And somebody actually pulled out the Formula One video game on Twitter and was like, hey, listen, the racing line does swing over to where Carlos was going, which is hilarious and apparently objectively true. But the Red Bull fans want to blame Carlos. Ferrari fans, the Tifosi, want to blame Sergio Perez. The FIA says racing incident. What do you say, Tim?
You gotta love the internet, Adam. It's undefeated, man.
Hilarious pulling out the F1 video game for that.
It's like I'm gonna show you guys on this video game where
this is what the video game says.
Relax, okay? Let's not do that. All right, so I agree with the FIA. I think it was a racing incident as well. It was a great move by Carlos, first of all, to get everything set up and just to watch, Leclerc and Perez scrapping and Sainz being like, all right, I'm going to pick up the pieces here.
Yeah.
Smart driving from him straight off the hop. I feel bad for Sergio because he had a really great weekend. Really did. I think
he did.
I think the upgrade that Red Bull brought, and we should talk about Red Bull more as a whole after this section because I do have some things to mention about that. But that incident itself, Adam, I view it as a racing incident only because Carlos doesn't really make a huge turn with the wheel. There's nothing that's really nothing really stands out. But at the same time, I think he kind of should know that he's there. He does take a quick peek in the mirror. You got to be able, I think he should hear him at that moment. He should hear that somebody's around as well. You got your earplugs in, the engine's really loud, but when you're racing somebody, you can sometimes hear them and you can feel that they're close by. You can just feel them even though you may not be able to see them.
Yeah.
And so Sergio holds his line, which is fair, and he's allowed to do that. I think that it's one of those moves that it's like Sergio's. I'm going to park myself right here, and I'm going to leave it up to you what happens. But this is where I'm going to be, and we're going to go like this down towards the next turn. So it's up to you, pal. Whatever we're going to do here, but I'm going to get you when we get down here, anyways. So good luck, type of deal. Sergio was in the right place to pull off a move at the next corner for sure. No question about it. But yeah, I view it as a racing incident because Sergio doesn't turn into him either. It's just one of those things that just happened by the looks of it. So, and
right.
They talked it out anyways. They were walking back to the paddock.
Did you see that a couple of fans stopped?
Seemed pretty
for
kosher. Yeah.
It's like, man, these guys are just in an accident. You got to get a picture with them. Come on.
Well, the same thing happened to Leclerc on Friday when he crashed in free practice 1 and he was sitting off to the side and the marshals were coming up to him taking selfies with him.
I know. Come on. Poor guy. It's crazy.
Oh
so it's for McLaren, we wake up this morning for the first time since 2014. It's been 10 years, 2014, and the race was the Australian Grand Prix. The last time McLaren led the World Constructors Championship. And I want to say that because they only had it for one race, and that team promptly fell apart. But Kevin Magnussen had a pretty crazy good debut. And they did. And then it just wasn't very good that year with probably the worst front wing we've ever seen on a car. Remember that it had nostrils on it?
Man,
ugly.
God, they were ugly cars.
So they
were horrible cars.
Horrible cars. And McLaren being in the lead is consequential, not just because they're in the lead, but also because somebody asked Helmut Marko, and gotta love Helmut, keeps it real. Hey, have you written off the World Championship now that McLaren's in the way? And he said yes. He thinks that they're not going to be able to bring a good upgrade package till at least Austin, and they're hoping that they're hoping that changes things. But I think that they believe that the time between then and now, I'm not sure why, but they believe that obviously if things go the way that they should and McLaren stays in the race and, Lando's actually making it to Q3 as he should, that's going to be very difficult for them to do. So let's talk Red Bull, Tim. What did you want to say on them?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, quite a few things. I think one of the issues that Red Bull has had is not listening to their drivers.
Yes.
And when I say that, I mean from the standpoint of bringing upgrades, building the car out for the rest of the season. I think too many engineers, and especially now, especially with Formula One, look at data and look at what data shows them. Our wind tunnel shows we're getting this many points of downforce when we run this on the car. So when we get to the track, it should also work that way. We should also be able to run the same amount of downforce, but you lose the drivability of the car.
Sure.
And it's not something that they really take into consideration is the driver, because everything is surrounded by the driver. They're the ones who are piloting the car. So you have to take them into consideration with their needs, what they like, how they like to drive the car, how they feel confident in the car, because they have to extract the performance, the maximum. So if the car's not giving them what they need and setup changes aren't giving them what they need, then there's something wrong with your design, clearly. And I think for so long, Red Bull's been chasing points of downforce. How much downforce can we get on the car? That they've lost track of what does Max need? What does Sergio need? What do they need as the drivers to get that confidence? You can see that with other teams now on the grid, right? We see RB brings a huge update to their car and it doesn't work, right? They're not quick. Ricardo looks all over the place. Sonoda looks everywhere, lost sometimes. It doesn't look good. Same thing goes with Aston Martin, right? They bring something, it doesn't work, and both drivers struggle. And so that's, I think, where Red Bull has gone wrong and where they need to revert back to is getting the drivers something that has given them some confidence. So instill some confidence back into them, because Max at the end of qualifying even said it to us. He even said he didn't have the confidence to drive the car, push it to the limit, because the car was just so ill handling. And they had made a setup change after free practice 3 heading into qualifying, where that just took Max's car in a totally different direction. And this is where we have to praise Max on how great he is as a driver to be able to take something that's so challenging to drive and scary at times, man, and have the confidence to get the performance out of it. This is that moment, because he's been remarkable all season in that department. As for Sergio, they brought a new floor, a revised floor for this race, and it seemed to help Sergio more than it helped Max, where Max was still struggling, so they decided to take a different direction with setup, and that just made things even worse. But for Sergio, he was able to take it and really extract the performance from the car all weekend. Sergio was the faster driver. He was the one that was showing us how quick the car actually really is. It was Max who was lagging behind. And this was a perfect opportunity for him, Adam, to really land a haymaker to Lando Norris. He had Norris down and out in this race, man. Down and out. This was an opportunity that was squandered, if you ask me. Wow.
Not a lot of people have put it that way, but you're right, Tim. This could have been the knockout punch right here.
It could have been. Yeah, this could have been huge for them. I think Singapore is going to be a struggle for Red Bull, Adam.
It was last year.
I really do. And
it was last year.
Yeah, and if they're not able to sort of get something that brings the car back around, then man, I don't know if they win this drivers' championship either, dude. It's going to be tough for them. It really is. They've really lost their way with this thing.
Wow, it's wild to hear you say that. Do you think whatever's coming in Austin, do you think it's going to be enough to at least make them competitive to the end? Do you think that they're, it's a tough turn, right?
and everything is so close now, right? The racing is just so friggin' close that, we'll go to a weekend and we don't even know who's going to be competitive, right? Like we just don't know who's going to be, the top dog at every race from here on out. Nobody knows that. The teams don't even know that, right? I mean, you could hear George Russell, just how frustrated he was at the end of this race, even getting a podium. But,
he was like, I probably shouldn't be here.
Yeah, but he wanted to talk more about the tires. Like he wanted to talk about like how he thinks Pirelli has gotten it wrong with the tire, because at one moment he slaps on a set of mediums and they suck, and then the next moment he slaps on a set of hards and they're great. And he's like, how do you explain that? He's like, he doesn't even think Pirelli can explain why that's happening, and he thinks there's something wrong with the tires as well. So like that's where we're at. So many different things just like thrown up into the air. And it could be the slightest of things that may help Red Bull turn their season around. Like it could be like a new front wing that could just turn everything around for them, but it may not, Adam. I mean, that's where we're at with all of this.
Well, and you know what? Obviously, I don't know if you've got enough time to create what Mercedes and McLaren have done with the flexi front wing, that flexi wing that is within the rules. I don't know. And there's a lot of talk about how McLaren are running a back wing. They seem to have figured out the rear spoiler and how it, there's some sort of. How would you explain it?
We got a question on that.
Okay, well, let's do the question now.
Yeah, so this is from Andrew DH98. He said, with the gap being to 59 points and this weekend being an outlier due to his qualifying, do you think McLaren will go all in on putting Norris in front of Piastri? Also, any thoughts on the mini DRS stuff going around with McLaren?
So do you think that they're running a mini DRS wing?
Okay, so every team, when they get a set of regulations, they find where they can bend the rules, right? Every single team does that. And, that's what Adrian Newey's so good at, right? He's good at finding the holes in the regulations where they can manipulate things. And then for the next year, those loopholes will be cut off, right? So for McLaren, they've done well here. I mean, they've found something within the regulation that is not banned, and they've been able to exploit it. And that's what they've done. I mean, in my opinion, it's smart. Look, I mean, every team does it. Every single team does it. If you're a Red Bull fan, they do it. If you're a Ferrari fan, they do it. If you're a Mercedes fan, they do it. They all do it. They all find ways of poking holes in the regulation to their advantage. And then the FIA have to come in and they have to close it off. But they can't close it off until next year. And so at this moment, I mean, it sounds like the FIA is fine with it because they haven't done anything wrong. Right. These cars are monitored pretty significantly now. Like they have cameras that are pointing at so they use these dots, right? And they put these dots on wings, on flexi portions of the car, and they have video cameras that shoot at them, and they can measure how much things are flexing and how much things are. They do deflection tests afterwards, static deflection tests. Mm-hmm. Some of it's for safety, and then some of it's to see if, hey, is this going beyond what the regulation is? Mm-hmm. And for McLaren, I mean, nothing, man. I mean, I'm sure it's a conversation that's going to come up this weekend, or next weekend, I should say, in Singapore. And we'll get more on it. But at this moment, like, the car went through scrutineering, like, and they all get tested the same way. We get a list, Adam. We get a list from the FIA after every Grand Prix, and it's from Joe Bauer, and it tells us exactly what's tested on every single car, and if it's passed scrutineering or if it hasn't passed scrutineering.
Right.
And they tell you, they sit there and they say, this thing was tested, the deflection point of blank. And people can go online and read it. Like the FIA even posts it on their website. Like you can find this stuff. And basically, like, it'll tell you, like, hey, we tested blank, 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 blank. Everything passed. We're good. This car is clear. So, I mean, the FIA's good with it. And, I mean, good for McLaren.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's all I got to say about that. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. And there's nothing anybody can do about it because they've found something that nobody else has.
So there were, Pierre Gasly got into a little trouble with some testing and that sort of thing. What happened there? Because you were talking about how they scrutinize these cars. What happened with Pierre?
Yeah, because that had to do with the mass, because he got disqualified from qualifying. And I'm trying to find the right wording for it. I had it written down here, but essentially it has to do with how much fuel is basically being pumped through the internal combustion engine. He exceeded the fuel mass flow, and so essentially, and they gave us like the data on like how much it was. It looked like it was quite a bit, but essentially, if you were to up how much fuel is actually going into the engine, then you're getting more power. If that makes any sense, right? You're creating more combustion, which is creating more power and energy, and the car is going to go faster. And it's usually used probably for straight line speed.
Yep.
You to bump that up a little bit more. But that's essentially what was going on with Pierre Gasly. But again, right, like the FIA caught it like immediately. Like they caught it. They sent it. I would say it was, when did I get the message for that? Maybe 20 minutes after qualifying it ended? Like,
wow.
They had already discovered it. They'd figured it out. They found it out, like, because they'd taken the car through Parc Fermé and through scrutineering. Like, it's just like they were on it. So I mean, people want to criticize the FIA, but man, they've got a lot of things to test and to make sure teams are not cheating. And there's so many things that they have to go through that they do a pretty quick, thorough job on everything.
Yes. And I got to say, one of the teams that were extremely impressive this week, and I guess that this track plays to their strength through Williams.
Yeah, they were great.
Franco Colapinto, the second race in a row, he scored points, which is amazing. Alex Albon had a little bit of a hiccup in qualifying, still got into the top 10, but they finished 9 and 10. It's obviously an enormous result for
7 and 8. 7 and 8.
Sorry, 7 and 8. Excuse me, because it was going to be 9 and 10 until Perez and Sainz took each other out. Yep. But with Colapinto and Albon finishing where they finished, we'll hang on to the driver rumors for a second. But this is a Williams team that didn't have a third tub going into the season, right? This is a team that like one race had to run just one driver because that's all they had. And now we're talking about 7 and 8 finishes. And do we expect it to last? Maybe not. But this has been very impressive the last couple of races.
Yeah, the upgrade that they brought to Zandvoort, Adam, it really is working for them nicely. And they worked a long time to get that upgrade, the update to the car. And obviously, Logan had his crash and they had some spare parts for it. But, they really didn't have the full package until Monza. And they were really strong there too, right? Like, look, the straight line speed that Williams has had, it's still sort of in the DNA of the car, but the car actually looks really good even in the slow stuff, which is great moving forward, which means we're probably going to see more of this kind of stuff from them. And like, we can't talk enough about how great Franco Colapinto was all weekend. He had that crash in free practice 1. And I thought like that's going to set him back because it's such a difficult track to gain your confidence and then to take a car and qualify it well. And man, he qualified that thing incredibly. Like it was he was the first Argentinian driver to qualify a car into the top 10 since Carlos Reutemann. I want to say it was 1982. I think it was, or 1984. It's along there somewhere. Like really incredible work from him to see what he had done. Like it was 42 years since an Argentinian driver started in the top 10. It was Carlos Reutemann. But impressive stuff, man. Like James Vowles was like so happy for him. I mean, obviously Vowles is happy about it because that's his guy, right? He's fine. Like we had talked about when Logan got let go, it's like, this is now going to be James Vowles' people here, right? Like he's going to put his full
Logan
stamp
was Jos
on everything.
Capito's person, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So no, really great stuff from him. It's very impressive. And you had mentioned, driver rumors and stuff like that. Ollie Behrman was awesome too. We got to give a shout out to him.
Man, he was great.
He was great. Good hard racing with him and Lewis Hamilton. I thought Lewis handled him very fairly, probably a little more fairly than I think a lot of other drivers probably would have, considering Behrman is a rookie. But yeah, those two had a great battle. Good for Behrman to score some points. Hülkenberg looked like asleep at the switch there. I don't know what was going on with Hülkenberg after that crash. I think he had gotten caught out, and he thought that there may have been a yellow flag or something, and that's how he got done in there. But Behrman did great as well. But yes, having Franco Colapinto do such a great job, it's definitely opened some conversations about where is he going to be next year. Adam, what do you think? We're honestly, man, I haven't gotten to dig into and reach out to people on Colapinto because we're taping this, it hasn't even been 24 hours.
No.
And so I've got to look into it and talk to some more people about it. But what do you think happens with Colapinto? Well, I have an idea. But
going into the weekend, obviously it was Bortoleto and Valtteri Bottas at Sauber. And now it seems like Colapinto is in that conversation as well. At least those are the rumors that are flying around, and you have to take those with a grain of salt. But after two really great performances, and I don't know what other choice we have here. What's the other what's the other seat that's available? That might be it. Mm-hmm. And if you're Sauber, do you want to go rookie next year with a car that probably still won't be very good? But you get a rookie who could be particularly good for the 2026 regulations. I mean, Bortoleto just took over F2's championship points lead anyway, so he might be kicked out of F2 for winning it. Basically, It's such a bizarre rule, but that's what it is. I don't know, man. You at least have to make the phone call if you're Mattia. Do you not?
I do, definitely do. It was interesting. Stella actually spoke about Bortoleto, and he had said that he'd never stand in the way of Gabriel leaving McLaren to go somewhere else to chase his Formula One dream.
Right.
So if he were to leave, he said he would not stand in his way. He wouldn't get in his way. If he had a seat, he'd let him go. But he wants to try and keep him in the McLaren family as much as possible. They do want to try and hold on to him. But I know Alonso's people are behind the scenes really pushing for Bortoleto to get that seat at Audi. And now all of a sudden, Franco Colapinto, he's got 7 more races to show us more of what he can do. If I'm Mattia Binotto, I'm going to sit back and see what else is going to come from this kid, because he was really good this weekend.
Yeah.
Really good. Could I see him going there? I mean, probably not. I think it may be difficult. I mean, it could happen. Don't get me wrong. It could happen. Anything could happen, but I don't know. I could see him going back to Formula 2 next year and trying to win that championship and being reserve driver for Williams and seeing if he can shake a seat out somewhere for 2026. Mm-hmm. Bortoleto and Bottas, from my understanding, those are the two that are the front runners for that seat at Sauber at the moment. Again, I got to look into it more, and there's a couple of people I got to talk to later this week. So.
It was interesting hearing Valtteri in his interview with The Athletic too this weekend, talking about the fact that he's gotten further in contract talks with Mattia already than he did with Andreas Seidel. And I think he attributes that to the fact that Ferrari and Mercedes were head-to-head for so long that Mattia might know him better.
Yeah, that's true. It's I think we had talked about this last pod, and I think the most important thing, Adam, is your experience, especially when you have Audi coming in. I think you need that stable base just to build your team upon first. If you have a rookie that's flying off everywhere, crashing, learning, drinking from a fire hose, it's going to be very difficult for you guys to get things up and running. If you have someone that is a steady pair of hands, you know what you're going to get. That's why Hülkenberg is there too. Then you should probably think about going with Bottas for another season, maybe 2, then start planning your driver development ladder, getting young rookies in and all that kind of stuff. If I'm running the team, if I'm Mattia Binotto, that's what I would do.
Just go vet.
I would. I just so you could have those. That's something you're not having to worry about right, Adam? Like,
yeah,
you know what you're going to get. Like, you're going to get some guys who are going to give you the good stuff. They're veterans.
Both of them qualify really well too.
Yeah,
even if the car doesn't have
exactly.
Yeah, like the one thing with Hulk and Bottas is that they have this ability to outperform the car in qualifying, and maybe the cars don't stand up in the full race, but they do always get themselves in there. And I think that it's valuable when you have objectively the worst car on the grid and you're trying to improve from that. To start further up than you thought possible, and maybe you fall a few spots, but you kind of have to give yourself the best shot.
Yeah, and I don't want to stop seeing like young drivers coming in and rookies and us getting to see like young drivers. And we're going to probably get to see more of them in December here. Like it sounds like there's going to be like a bit of a young driver race between 10 drivers in Formula One following the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. It sounds like we're going to be getting that this year, but it hasn't been signed, sealed, and delivered just yet. It's just things that I'm hearing. But I mean, again, like we're going to get a good look at a lot of these drivers, see what they can do with their teams, whatever. But at the same time, it's like when you're something as big as Audi and you're bringing in such a big operation, I think you got to have that stable foundation first before you can start playing around with who do you want driving your car, like. What is the young talent that's coming in? What do we want? All that kind of stuff.
Got it.
Adam, I know you got to get running, but we got some questions.
Let's get to them.
All right. Fiona, do you have any insight on what VCarb are doing with themselves? Honestly, thought they were not going to pit Danny Rick. Okay. In terms of like driver lineup, things are still status quo. Ricciardo's still in the car for the rest of the season. They don't know what they're doing next year. They have to make a decision soon. Actually, they probably already need to make that decision because I think Lawson's contract is up as of us recording today. I believe it is, anyways. I believe they had until the 15th or the 16th of September to get him signed up. But again, where he ends up going, I have no idea at this moment. But yeah, I mean, I thought Ricciardo had an up and down weekend, just didn't look consistent, Adam. But I think at times, like he probably drove better than what that car was probably giving them, I think.
Yep.
All weekend. Still needs to fine tune his qualifying for sure. There's no question about that. I mean, it's been, that's two races. I think
they say in a couple races, they're going to have an announcement. That's what Helmut keeps saying. So I don't know. You never know.
We'll see what happens there. Tamara Sutherland, in spite of the late crash, was Sergio Perez's impressive weekend. Sufficient to help protect his spot in Red Bull, with Singapore not always the best track for the team. What is a reasonable expectation for next weekend from him compared to Verstappen? Okay, so I don't yet know what they're going to do with Sergio for next season. It was one good performance. He probably could have had a shot at winning this thing, but I mean, again, it's going to take some time, I think, for Red Bull to figure out what they want. For Singapore, I think is going to be tough for them, Adam.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're looking for top 10 finish, and if they can get 5-6 or something like that, that's about where they finished last year when they had the most dominant car on the grid. So I think Max was 7th. So yeah, just finish together, and wherever you finish, make sure it's getting points.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much it for questions. Thanks everybody for writing in. Appreciate it. That's pretty much it, Adam. That was a good Grand Prix. I really liked it. That was a great race. One
of the most entertaining. The only sad thing is that we had to finish under virtual safety car, but that you can't get everything you want. But pretty close anyway. McLaren are leading the world championship right now. We'll see what happens with Lando and Max, and we'll talk to you guys on Thursday.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.